Looks like maybe I'm better connected now. So the question is, can Mother Nature, or am I just define Mother Nature? And this reminded me of a something that Qigong Master Chen Yulin said. Um, I don't know, maybe like 10 years ago, he was talking about some hurricane. There, he was meditation, encouraged to meditate to stop this big hurricane from striking. I think it was the south. That in his nation he could see storm as having a lot of anger energy. Now, how is this possible? This would be the same question as to how ghosts, like how could you have an angry ghost? And so, in other words, ghost is just coherent um, biophotons or photon energy, which is actually laser energy. So it's coherent, quantum coherent light that I've seen personally. So I know that ghosts are real. How could they be angry or have any kind of emotional energy? Because we think of emotions as a electrochemical phenomenon, tied to matter that has mass. But just thinking about this, I realized, well, actually, and Andrei Puharich's research got into this also, but essentially, he argued that memory is stored in the magnetic moment. Um, what I called it, like virtual photons have a magnetic moment, which is essentially it's the same thing as the local spin. So essentially, you have a time reversed precession. So you can think of it as like a slow, like if you think of the planet Earth rotating, it's a slow backwards wobble of the planet, like as they talk about, like with the Milankovitch cycle is slow backwards because of the tilt of the, you get the precessions of the equinoxes. I think it's like 25,000 years or something that the early farmers kept track of, with the megalith. Hancock's researches on this. It's like a key secret of Freemasonry. It's also found in alchemy. Soul is tied to the moon. You have this like gateway, and so in terms of energy, when you have that magnetic moment, it's essentially like a charge. And video on YouTube about Ampere's law. Ampere's law argues that the force is actually due to a charge of matter. Think about photons have mass. It does have additional mass, and what that means is that in terms of relativity, space time is defined by the momentum energy, and so you that's why I'm trying to investigate gravitons or what is gravity. And there's an argument that gravity is actually a byproduct of quantum entanglement. So the information content, space time, and so therefore, what's powering the ghosts is what in meditation they call the emptiness, as the absolute void that eternally radiates light. And so the emptiness is like the spirit connection to the soul, and the soul would be like our collective consciousness as this magnetic moment of the photon. So the emotional energy is the frequency of the light tied to the organs in our body that stores this information. So the anger is a liver blockage, which is very common in the West, due to that Western agricultures relied on alcohol and with religion being tied to alcohol, like Dionysian and s- like some claim that the communion is actually grape juice, but why did Jesus turn water into wine if alcohol is bad, that kind of thing. Like there's this paradox, but Martin Luther, but he claimed drink as much as his drank or something. It's like at any rate, in non-Western culture though, they will how's your liver. It's considered to show anger in public, but in the Western culture, we pride us on being angry in public because that's like a patriarchal, macho kind of thing. Um, and we expect violent sort of dominance of the patriarchy or whatever. But in the subtle energy, liver, like in Buddhism, it's just a lower emotional blockage. You doing? And so in meditation, the what's called the red dragon, the liver energy, it comes out of your eyes when your eyes are open through the heart. And the wisdom is the liver turns green. So you close the eyes and then you visualize below, like visualize the fire below the water or body. And then that creates when the steam is this cosmic energy that's non-local, or in terms of quantum physics it's non-local, but in Eastern philosophy is called dualism, which is two. So it's this oneness that neither inside nor outside the body, but you can define it in terms of time as from the future. So the magnetic is this spirit connection as our emotional energy connected to our soul. So, for example, one time I got a healing from Qigong Master Jim Nance. This is his website. Um, whoops. It felt like a really high buzzing in my body, and I didn't say anything as he gave me the healing. I could feel it in certain parts of my body, my lower. I just trusted what he was doing, and he wasn't touching me or anything. It was just like this electrical um buzzing, like tingling, like like a charge. You could feel the charge, like electrical charge, but like with a high vibration, like. And when so then I when he was done, I could feel it kind of like moving around, as he and I could feel he was like looking, he was in from just energy blockage, but actual experience. So what happens is that with our eyes open, we store the light in our body graphically as it's it external. We actually first soul experiences it from the future precognitively and also holographically. So it's interwoven locally. And so by meditation, we're living into the future and we're able to then make contact with our soul. And that's what the blue is. And when you see the blue light meditating, you're then resonating with the future through the virtual photons that cannot be seen. They have the ability through non-commutativity. It's like this asymmetric flowing of time, to reverse the frequency. And by reversing the frequency, you're able to then clear out your soul energy. And so, Qigong Master, after he finished, he asked me, "How did I feel?" And I feel lighter." And he was really pleased with my response because it's like, why would you feel lighter if somebody's releasing light from your body? And that's because the virtual photons have gravitational mass. And normally we don't think of light as having gravitational mass, but there's this um, by Gerard Hooft. And essentially, if you think of every photon actually has this virtual photon embedded in it, and that's what creates matter itself. So you can create new matter that called the Yangshen in Taoism, which is a golden immortal body. But in Western, they call it I don't even say it. Numina, Nuema. It's a Greek word. But anyway, so it's this idea that Jesus was the spiritualized matter that then just vaporized. I mean, that's what the Taoist Qigong masters ultimately do is they vaporize their body back in Qi energy. And so when the Qigong master Chen Yilin, when he heals ghosts, and this is his website, I saw him healing ghosts. So he says that they go back into. He makes a light really bright. So when you're making the light really bright, what you're increasing the intensity of the light, which is the number of the photons. But the by increasing the number of the photons, you have to use negative, which is this um a process that through the virtual photons. And so when you do that, you're like reversing the moment that the stored up emotional energy of the light. In other words, like if we realize that all matter is made of photons, then the chemistry of matter originates from photons. So the emotional energy directly tied to the frequency of the light. And this is why ghosts and Mother Nature energy directly tied to the frequency of the light. And this is why ghosts and Mother Nature can have emotional energy also. And energy also and have revenge. That's sort of a bit complicated near the end, but essentially, you're revert in alchemy, you're reversing the entropy of time. And so you're using time to reverse time through the photon energy. And there was an experiment where they used entangled photon. They proved that when you clock as if with a clock that's entangled with another photon, then you can create this like evolution as entropy or negative entropy. And so that's how space-time is actually created. So you're dealing with like a quantum black hole when you do the meditation. And so that's why Chinese saw these um the hurricane have angry energy. Now obviously this kind of information could easily get co-opted by the new age, the theosophy, stuff like that, because they don't deal with they're still stuck in the Platonic of mathematics. So they use like scalars and fractals, and all that is commutative geometry. That's all just Platonic or chaos math. That's all still just symmetric mathematics that I go into in my 2012 book. I go into why that stuff's not. It's still just like Western Freemasonry. So it's really easy for somebody to get into this topic, and then they're still stuck in Western Freemasonry because they don't understand the structural mathematical difference between non-Western meditation and the Platonic philosophy. Because Platonic philosophy is so deep, it's the origin of it. Actually even goes back to like Vedic and Brahman, which I get into that in my 2000 book. So it's pretty much all I wanted to say, and show off my mushrooms again. Another interesting thing is people are starting to use algae on their pasture for cat, and the algae is able to through photosynthesis. It then is able to um, in the soil, otherwise are locked rocks. And I think the algae is working with the fungi because the fungi we know fungi also breaks down the rocks to make those nutrients available to the algae. So, like if you consider lichen, it's a symbiotic relationship, and both algae and fungi sequester CO2, but the algae is using photosynthesis, whereas the and then emitting oxygen, whereas the fungi are using oxygen, and then almost that's essentially alchemy right there when you have of algae and fungi, which is what lichen is. So it's pretty fascinating that farmers are using algae, and it also that's proven to reduce the methane in the cattle. You know that the cattle would normally emit methane. So if we eat spirulina, that probably I don't know. Anyway, and it reminds me, I did a experiment using cocoa. I was taking heavy doses of cocoa for a few months, for the tryptophan, because Stuart Hameroff, he argues that if the tryptophan is uh, it's an enzyme the microbials in itself that then activates this blue light, and so it is inherently non-local information. So I was having like 3 tablespoons of cocoa every night, and sure enough, my dreams were very psychedelic. I have really hyperkinetic visual dreams based on my subconscious, and also felt a lot of bliss because the tryptophan is related to the serotonin. It's like a precursor, so it increases your serotonin. And I read today that the tryptophan increases the indole bacteria in your body, and the indole bacteria, it's an anaerobic bacteria. That's the primary one of the primary bacterias of fecal matter. Indole bacteria is that musty smell that people talk about. Like they joke, if you haven't bathed, like bathed in a couple days or so, you start smell musty, and that's literally the indole bacteria. And they even complain that chocolate will have that musty, and I know that byproduct, and so it's inherent to the production, of the cocoa itself. So here I am, like feasting on, like I feel great, but the indole is thriving in my body. So I'm like, oh, I can't. If I want to, be in civilization, I can't. I mean, it was anyway. I think I lost my connections going out. So I stopped all my cocoa nightly intake and ended that experiment with the biophoton emotional energy.